Hey friends, welcome back to yet another video here on my channel. It has been a minute. If you've, I'm sure, seen by the caption of the video, this is a long-awaited Q&A. I know I'm so bad. Sometime last year, I asked that you drop some questions so that I can have a Q&A, because I'd picked up that a lot of people were sending me DMs and a few messages asking questions, and I thought it would be a good idea to put a video together answering those questions. But I never really followed up on that, and I never really did a Q&A as I should have. And again this year, after I picked up that, you know, I was getting a few more questions daily, more and more in my, you know, DMs and all of that, I figured it would be a good question to again attempt to do another Q&A this year. And I asked that you send all your questions, and some of you did send through a few questions. I've also picked a few from last year's questions, and I will answer those here. I'm sorry for taking that long, but I've also only decided to take only 10 questions, and if your question hasn't been answered here, I am really sorry. I just didn't want to, you know, make the video too long, so I thought 10 is a good round number to pick, and hopefully some other time I will do another Q&A. So without wasting any further time, let's get to it. I will be looking down. Apologies if I keep missing eye contact there. It's because I have the questions written down on my iPad here, and I'll be looking down to read through those questions. So question number 1, I would like to know how you and hubby split expenses. Do you have a joint account? How did you start the financial conversation? Look, as far as I know, and I know this because we looked, there are no joint accounts in South Africa. The major banks don't do joint accounts anymore for spouses. I know they used to, but apparently that's not done anymore. And if I'm wrong in saying that, and maybe someone out there knows better and knows that there are joint accounts, but I know with the major banks, we tried to find out if we can have a joint account, and we were told that those have been stopped. But if you know of any, and maybe you know better than I'm saying now, please leave that in the comments below and let us know if there's been improvements on that. But last we checked, the major banks were no longer doing joint accounts for spouses. So the answer to that is no, we do not have a joint account. He has his account, I have my account. But with that said, we share the income. It's not his money, it's not my money, it's our money. We consider it to be a household income, a combined household income. We do sit down every single month for our budget meeting that we hold once a month, and then we talk about the budget for that month. And whatever is listed there is going to be taken out of the joint income, not his income or my income. It's considered a joint household income. So that's how me and my husband work with regards to our finances. Even though we don't have a physical joint account, our money is joint. It is the household income, not your income or my income. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope I didn't rumble too much. And the second part of your question, I believe, is how did you start the financial conversation? To be honest with you, before we started, or before we came across Dave Ramsey and his system and his steps and the total money makeover thing, we were just winging life. We were just, yes, money would come in, we would take care of what needs to be taken care of, we would budget, not follow through. So it was just a dog show, a hot mess, to be honest with you. And I think I'm the one, I'm the one who first came across Dave Ramsey and his total money makeover concept and his baby steps. And I generally really was sold, and after I was sold, I really just started the conversation with my husband to say, hey, I came across this interesting thing, this interesting man called Dave Ramsey, and these are the steps that he suggests. I really just walked him through what I discovered. I'd be lying if I said my husband got on board immediately. No, he did not. It took him a few months to be sold to the idea of us budgeting every single month strictly and sticking to that budget and following the Dave Ramsey's baby steps and Dave Ramsey's concepts, it took him a few months to be on board. But what I think helped me in convincing him to be on board, I wouldn't say he was really resistant, but he wasn't so eager to jump on board as I was. He wasn't like, yay, let's do it. No, he was like, oh, okay, I hear you, there's a guy called Dave Ramsey. Oh, okay. He wasn't as eager as I was, but he wasn't really resistant, so he was somewhere in the middle. And I think what helped was I bought him the Total Money Makeover book, the Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, for him to read. I also would sometimes, when we get him ready in the morning, play Dave Ramsey's podcast or play his YouTube videos. And I think that helped because without him realizing, he was slowly absorbing this information. And I think after a while, he realized that, oh my God, he realized that, I think this guy is onto something. I think you're onto something. And now, without fail, every single month we sit for a budget meeting. We usually do the budget in our bedroom, away from all the noise and the interruptions. So I think even this last month, he's the one that said, hey, I think it's time we go sit and do our monthly budget. So he is now completely on board. It wasn't a sudden thing. It took a bit of convincing and a bit of pushing. But by pushing, I mean I slowly introduced him to, slowly made him listen to the podcast without sometimes even when we had a trip where we would both be in the car, I would play Dave Ramsey's podcasts in the car, and slowly but surely I think he realized that me and Mr. Dave Ramsey were onto something. So I think my advice would be, if maybe you're asking this question because your husband is maybe not on board or resistant or resisting getting on board, I'm not a financial advisor by any means. I always say I do this based on my own personal experiences, and I can only give advice on my own personal experiences. I'm thinking you're asking this question because maybe your partner is not on board. So I would say I found what helped me was, because sometimes when you try to pass information, it's not the same as if somebody really took the information from the source. So I found what helped me was regularly playing Dave Ramsey's podcasts and the videos where I knew my husband would be listening. And I would do it in such a way where I wouldn't say, come sit and watch. I would do it in a way where he's getting ready in the morning and the podcast is playing. He has no choice but to listen. Or sometimes on a trip in a car, he will listen. So in a way where it wasn't in a forceful way, but in a way where I eased him into it. So I think that kind of helped, because even the book, I just bought it for him and he slowly read it. He took his time reading it, but he slowly read it. And I think my letting him get the information from the main source is what helped, instead of me trying to convince him myself. I hope that makes sense. The second question is, when was your sick and tired of being broke in debt moment? I know that in this community, most people have that one defining moment where they say, this is when I knew that I need to get my ducks in a row, I need to get my ish together, and I'm sick and tired of being. They have that one defining sick and tired of being broke moment. I wish it was the case with me, but it's not. I have what I call my main motivator, or my main inspiration that pushed me. That main motivator was realizing how quickly my kids were growing. I remember I was just sitting one day and I couldn't believe that my daughter, who was a baby just a second ago, was now 7 years old. And I realized that we still didn't have our financial ducks in a row. We still didn't really have our coins right. So I think that was I slowly but surely I started panicking with realizing that, I would sit and think, in no time she'll be done with primary, she'll be going to high school, she'll be needing to go to varsity. Before we know it, we'll be retiring. And I think realizing how quickly my kids were growing up is what sent me into a panic to say, we need to start getting our act together. We need to, start putting our ducks in a row. We need to figure this financial thing together, because I would hate to wake up one day and not be able to provide for my kids the way I want to provide for them, or wake up one day and be burden to my children because I never saved up for retirement, or I never really had a financial plan. So I think for me it wasn't one defining moment. However, it was mainly a panic with realizing that my kids are growing quicker than I'm getting my act together, and little by little this thing sent me into a mini frenzy, and that's what motivated me to start this journey and start trying to, for their sake, figure things out. The third question would be, how did your journey begin and how far are you in your journey? As I've already mentioned, I think the question I just answered previously speaks more to this one. For me, was my kids and seeing that they were growing fast, and it motivated me to start this journey of having some financial freedom, because I would that's how it really started. My kids were my main motivator, and wanting to make sure that their parents know what they're doing in terms of finances, and their parents will be in a position to take care of them. And how far we are with my journey, if you've been following along, I think you'll know that we're not really far in this journey. It hasn't been that long since we started this journey. However, we are at a point where we are saving for our 3 to 6 months emergency fund. We want to fully fund the 6 months emergency fund, and then fully fund a buffer, or what I like to call a month ahead fund, which will act as a buffer between our income and the emergency fund. So that's where we are. We're still very early on. You know that there's 7 steps, and this one is just a 3rd step, and we're not really fully complete with the 2nd step. So we're still very in the beginning phase of this process, but we've learned quite a lot and we've changed quite a lot because of starting this process. The question number 3 is, how much debt were you in? The number, if only if you're comfortable sharing. Look, I'm quite an open person, and I think if this was just about me, I would give out that number, but out of respect for my husband and his privacy, because he's not the one who chose to come here and have a YouTube channel, this is my choice. So, but out of respect for him and his privacy, I'm not gonna talk about the real numbers, because it's not just my numbers, it's his numbers as well, and I don't think that's something he'd be comfortable with. He didn't choose to be open like this, I chose to, but I will still try to do this channel in a way that still respects his privacy. So due to that, I will not say the exact numbers. However, I will tell you and disclose what debt we had before we started this journey and where we are now. When we started this journey, we had a personal loan, we had a credit card debt, we had car debt. But as we sit now, after having started this journey, we have fully paid the personal loan debt, we have fully paid the credit card debt, and then we are only left with our car loan debt. And we're not left with that much on the car, and we're not that aggressive in paying it off, because due to this pandemic, as you would have seen in one of my videos, I've explained that we're really trying to tweak the Dave Ramsey's baby steps to try to fit our situation. And what this pandemic taught us was that you need an emergency fund, and you need that emergency fund funded quickly. So we've passed baby step number 2, which is to aggressively pay all our debt, and we're concentrating on fully funding our emergency fund. So all the other debts are cleared except for the car loan, which is not left with that much either. So as soon as we fund our 3 to 6 months emergency fund, we'll aggressively get into paying off that one car. The next question is, I would like to know how you make saving a buck look so cool. Also, do you have any beauty tips on a budget? I didn't realize I make saving look cool. Thanks for that. Generally, what I would say is saving is not something that comes naturally, at least not for me. I know it doesn't come naturally for my husband either, but it's something that you have to be intentional about. Unless you are intentional about putting away some money, unless you're intentional about making sure that when you go out shopping for grocery, you make sure that you shop wisely. When, whatever it is you're doing with money. Unless you're intentional about it, you will not be able to do it. So you just have to be mindful and intentional and follow through. If you decide you want to save a certain amount every single month, and you know that you can afford to save that amount, don't wait until you've paid up all your expenses. Take it out, pay yourself first. Let it be the first money that comes out of your budget. I even dare say automate it. So saving is not something that comes naturally, and I don't even think it's something that feels cool to do. It is cool eventually, but when you're doing it, it's something that you have to train your mind to do, and eventually it really does come as second nature, but it doesn't really come naturally to begin with. And for the second part of your question with regards to beauty tips on a budget, I want to say in the beginning I was someone who, because I've always had problematic skin. I've never been one of those people who are lucky to just have flawless glowy skin naturally. I've always, since I was a teenager, I've always had problematic skin. So I've been through, if you call a product, especially because I had teenage acne, I knew all the acne products, and I think I started believing that the more expensive the beauty products, the more expensive the makeup, the better it was for my skin. But after starting to be intentional about my frugal living, I think I even mentioned this in one of my videos where I was talking about things that I had stopped buying. I'll link that video somewhere in the box here. I mentioned that I've stopped buying expensive makeup altogether. We are lucky now, we have YouTube, we have wonderful beauty YouTubers who go and research all the affordable but good beauty products for us, and they've put them out there for you to try out. So since being frugal, I just went and researched. I downgraded my foundation from using a very expensive foundation that was costing me $650, and I'm now down to a foundation that only costs $110. That's like saving $500 on a foundation. And to be honest with you, I don't really miss that foundation. The one that I have now does the work. Why? Because I did my research, and a lot of YouTubers, beauty YouTubers, had already researched this makeup for me, and they've put it out there that it's a good makeup. So I went and tried it out. So I think we are lucky nowadays that we have so much information, so many resources, and we can really get away with having finding beauty products that work, but that are not that expensive. So I would say to you, I'm not a beauty guru, I'm not a beauty YouTuber, I'm not a beauty expert, but what I will say to you is, for every single thing that you use on your face, there is a cheaper option that would work for you. All you have to do is go out there and do your research and try out the product and figure out if it works for you. That's what I've done with all my beauty products, and since being frugal, I've downgraded most of them from expensive brands to okay brands, and I don't think my skin is suffering that much from that. So that would be my tip. Go out there and do your research before you downgrade, and try the product out yourself and see if it works. My next question is, can you share tips on healthy school lunches? This is it's actually one of the biggest requests I've had, that along with can you share how to make vegetables last longer, tips on preserving vegetables and making sure food lasts longer. I think the healthy and affordable lunch question is one of the most requested ones, and because of this, I think one of the videos that I'll do is share with you what my kids take to school in a week. So it's one of the videos that I have on my list, only because this question I've been getting quite a lot. School lunches do require for you to be quite creative, especially if you want to stick to healthy options, but this is not something I think I can now give out tips now just in this video, because I believe it's a whole video by in itself, and it's something I'll hopefully shoot soon, showing you maybe a week's worth of my kids' school lunches, and how I generally work through making sure that they still have healthy lunches that are still within a good budget. That together, as I mentioned, I've gotten I think about 5 questions now on people asking me to share a video on how I preserve the bulk food that I buy, like your vegetables, how I make sure they last long. So I want to say this question requires a whole video by itself, and it's a video that I hope to shoot soon. Question number 7 is, what's your take on getting a professional bank account rather than still using a student account for your first job? Again, I can only base my answers on my own personal experience, and I just want to tell you a short story. When I first started working, I opened a pay-as-you-use account, and when I started having kids and my responsibilities increased, I started buying a car and all of those, I still stuck to that pay-as-you-use account. And then later on, I realized that I was paying quite a lot of fees, and because it's a pay-as-you-use, each time an activity happened in my bank account, I would get charged for it. And then I later realized that a pay-as-you-use is not for someone, is mainly for young people who have just started working, who don't have a lot of responsibility, or who do not have a lot of things being taken out of their accounts. And because I had now had more responsibilities and a lot of activity happening in my bank account, pay as you use was getting more expensive. It was cheaper when I was younger because there was not a lot of activities happening in my bank account, and I didn't have a lot of responsibilities that I took care of from my account. And I quickly learned that it would be cheaper to move to a bank account where I paid one fee monthly, and I do not get charged for every single activity that happened in my bank account. And when I worked it all out, I realized I was paying so much in fees because I stayed on the pay as you use. The reason for this lovely story that I just told you is there is a bank account for every single lifestyle, also depending on what bank you are at. So talk to your banker, figure out what would be the best account for your lifestyle. Question number 8 is, did you manage to achieve your financial goals during these difficult times? I assume the difficult times that you're referring to here are now with the COVID 2020 and a whole mess of it. And the answer to that is no, we did not achieve the goals we had hoped to achieve. Reason number 1, because we experienced loss of income due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 2 is because we restructured those goals. This pandemic forced us to restructure our goals and have new goals in place. So we didn't achieve that for those 2 reasons, because we had to go into survival mode due to the loss of income. Reason number 2 being because we had to change those goals, because I think a lot of us grew a bit after this after 2020 has forced most of us to grow and view life differently, and in fact change our goals. Question number 9 is, what tips do you have for investing for retirement at any age? Again, a bit of disclaimer, I am in no way a money expert, a financial expert, an investment expert. In fact, this is something that we are trying to put off a bit. We are learning quite a lot about investing, and we're trying to put our foot into investing, but we are in no way experts. But what I can say, again, based on my own personal experience, is I wish I had started investing towards retirement quite earlier, only because you take advantage of compound interest that way. I feel like I started a bit late, and I wish I had started as soon as I started working. So my advice is, if you're young, start now. Start researching the best ways to start contributing towards your retirement now. If you are middle-aged, start still and try to increase the contribution because you lost time. If you're in your 40s or 50s, it's never too late. It's never too late to start. So whatever age you are at, start. Just start. That's all I can say with retirement. Start. Question number 10 is, do you really allocate every single cent in your budget? And the answer to that is yes. Every single time we sit and have our budget meeting, we allocate every single cent out of that joint income. Each single cent will have a name, it will have a job to do. Unallocated money is idle money. Idle money gets bored, and when it gets bored, it's gonna want to do something somewhere. So unless you give it a name, it's gonna be idle, and it's gonna somehow get used somewhere. And the question is, if you haven't allocated it, wherever you're going to use it, is it the right place that it's supposed to go? So we allocate every single cent when we budget. Do we always stick to that allocation? No. There are times that you will find, honestly, that I went a bit crazy with my grocery shopping and I didn't stick to the budget. But what I will do is I will try to balance it, figure out a way to now take from somewhere and close there. But every single month when we sit down, we allocate each and every single cent, and we try our level best to stick to that budget. That is all I have for you today. And if your question hasn't been featured on this video, I truly really apologize. I just didn't want to make this video long and boring, but there will be other Q&As to come. And thanks as always for watching. I will see you in my next video. Have a good one. Bye bye.